Amidst heightened security challenges across the country, President Muhammadu Buhari has made yet another landmark achievement with the Council of State meeting he presided over in Abuja yesterday, granting state pardon to 159 beneficiaries, including former General Commanding Officer, GOC 3rd Mechanized Division Army in Jos, and Minister of Communications during the military regime of General Sani Abacha, Major General Tajuddin Olarewaju retired. General Olarewaju military aide Lieutenant Colonel Oluwole Oyebanji Akinyode convicted for the Diaz coup in 1997, and all junior officers jailed over the 1990 abortive Gideon Orkar coup also made the list. Even as two former governors, Joshua Dariye of Plateau State and Jolly Yame of Taraba State, were also pardoned. Adesuwa Omoroa tells us more.
It was a well-attended meeting. All living past heads of state and former presidents were in attendance, either physically or virtually. A minute silence in honor of former head of interim government, Chief Ernest Shonekon, who died on January 11th this year, was observed before commencement of proceedings. The fourth meeting of the Council of State under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration has just been concluded. It was also the first for the year 2022. Coming on the heels of increased killings across the country, especially in the northern part, it was no-brainer that would lead the discourse.
Security was raised, and plus the recent killings were raised, and that was why there was wide discussion, and it takes a lot of time from all the governors and stakeholders commenting on the situation in their places. Where the situation is escalating is mentioned, where the situation is getting better was mentioned, and suggestions, like I've said, were proposed and solution discussed, and that was why President wants to call for the Security Council meeting on Tuesday to discuss all the issues raised here. And secondly, on food security, yes, concerns were raised for high cost of food, but again, at the meeting it was discussed that it is a global phenomenon.
Director General of the National Population Commission, Nasru Isa Kwara, disclosed that the Council gave a go-ahead for the conduct of the National Population Census for April 2023, promising to deliver what he says would be a digital, accurate, and widely acceptable census. A pilot head count will take place in June this year.
Issues were discussed about security and Nigerians, since we are all interested in taking this census, we believe that security will be overcome. The case of Anambra is just clear in mind. We're unable to conduct elections in spite of insecurity in Anambra. So the conduct of census nationwide, since Nigerians are interested in conducting census, we'll be able to overcome insecurity.
According to the Minister of Special Duties and Intergovernmental Affairs, Senator George Akume, over 400 people are being considered for national honors for their contribution to the country.
One reason or the other, the President has not been able to confer these honors since we came in 2015. And that is why the list proposed is rather lengthy, is long. About 434 Nigerians and friends of Nigeria have been proposed for these awards.
The advisory body also deliberated on the memos from the Presidential Advisory Committee on Prerogative of Mercy, chaired by the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation. In all, 159 people were granted pardon, mercy, respite, and reduction in sentences. But Nigerians will now be waiting with bated breath to see just how lasting the solutions proffered here at the meeting of Council of State and the Security Council meeting, which will be chaired by President Muhammadu Buhari on Tuesday, to further deliberate on the outcomes of the meeting here today, would bring to the challenging security matters across the country. From the presidential villa in Abuja, Adesua Omoran reporting for Arise News. It was a well-attended meeting. All living past heads of state and former presidents were in attendance, either physically or virtually.
Right, Tundu, your take on this Council of
Well,
State
a
meeting
few
yesterday?
issues were raised there. Most pressing, by far, is the issue of security. And we're told that not that much was decided yesterday. What we are told was that all the state governors gave reports. So there's going to be a follow-up meeting with the National Security Council on Tuesday. And food security was also mentioned there in Adeswa's report. And the president seems very concerned about food security in Nigeria and in neighboring countries. You know, he's always concerned about neighboring countries. And obviously the important issue to those individuals, congratulations to all of them, including the posthumous pardons, the presidential pardons that were obtained by 159 people. That's great for them. And then also the national honors list that hasn't been done. It actually didn't occur to me. I completely forgot. We haven't actually had national honors given out in this Buhari administration. So there's over 400 people being considered. But you know, national honors lists are often controversial. That tends to be the case. There's always somebody quibbling about this, that, or another. But even more controversial has always been our census figures. It's good to hear some kind of agreement on the census, which is long overdue. I think the last one was, what, 15, 16 years ago? So it's really way overdue. Yeah, it's way overdue at this point. So, but hopefully for the first time in our history, I don't want to get into all of that because of time, we have never had a census that has been accepted across the board. There's always some kind of controversy. And I do hope we finally use technology to buck that trend. And I hope that obviously the pilot scheme that's been proposed for later this year in June, you know, starts us off on a good note. For crying out loud, for once in our lives, we need a decent census and decent elections while we're at it. That there'll be no controversy for once in our history.
Dr. Pasi?
Okay, yesterday we talked about the Council of State and, you know, its importance. But essentially, I made a point yesterday that the powers under the Constitution vest the powers to invite the Council of State in the President. And that is basically an advisory body to deal with specific issues, including prerogative of mercy, national honors list, population census, and any other matter that the president in his wisdom may think is seeking advice about. And whatever advice is given is not obligatory. Now, let's look quickly at the issues discussed. The first is the prerogative of mercy, under which 162 persons made applications to the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation, and with 159 persons were granted pardon, including the former governor of Plateau State and also former governor of Taraba State, Reverend Jolin Yame. The other governor, Joshua Daria, had been sentenced to 14 years. This was reduced to 10 years, but the ruling was confirmed by the Supreme Court for over 1 billion naira money laundering matter. The other person, Reverend Jolin Yame, was sentenced to 14 years, and they were already serving their terms. But under Section 175, Section 1 of the Constitution, the president has powers to grant pardon. Now, what is this pardon about? It means that, look, it's a nullification of whatever offense that may have been committed and whatever consequences may derive therefrom, which means, in other words, that it will be adjudged as if they never committed any offense. Now, the rationale for it is that this is like the executive exercising some powers over what may be considered judicial excesses, right? It may also be on the grounds of public pardon. In Wilson's case, in the U.S., United States versus Wilson, the point was made that it is an act of grace, which means, therefore, that there is no judicial review into whatever is done. This is not the first time that the Nigerian government will grant pardon. The Gowon government granted pardon to Chief Anthony Enaoro and Chief Obafemi Awolowo. The Shagari government granted pardon to Odimegu Ojukwu, Chief Odimegu Ojukwu. And then, of course, the Abdusalami Abubakar government granted pardon to Chief Olusegun Obasanjo after his conviction by the Abacha Military Tribunal. And then the most controversial of all was the pardon granted by the Jonathan administration to Chief Diepreye SP Alami Yesiega, former governor of Bayelsa State. So we've had examples in the past. People can moralize about it, as they did in the case of Alami Yesiega, but it's not subject to judicial review, and it's to be differentiated from what is called amnesty. Amnesty is granted to persons who are not yet facing prosecution. It's to be differentiated from when prisoners are released by chief judges. Chief judges act under the Criminal Act, Justice Act, and the Police Act. So this is what has happened now. Opinion may be divided about the decision that has been taken, but that is it. On the National Honors List, I had, the statement that over 400 and something people will be honored just because previously people have not been honored. Well, I find that curious. I've always said that the list of the National Honors List in Nigeria is always unwieldy. Why is it unwieldy? Over 400 people. And if we check that list, this will not be persons who have done anything extraordinary. These will be traditional rulers. These will be persons who have held public offices. So you worry about the criteria, for selecting people who will be going about calling themselves CFRO, FRO, GCON, whatever. Sometimes, what are the privileges? Maybe you get a good seat somewhere, when you go to the airport and you decorate yourself with the title. But if you look at the Queen's Honors List, there's greater emphasis on merit and achievement. As for census, well, we've been on it for long. The Council of State may offer advice, but it's for the president to take the advice because it's not obligatory. And then you have the talk about security. The president on Tuesday will meet with the security chiefs. Okay, as recommended by the Council of State. We have been meeting with these security chiefs forever. So what is likely to come out of that meeting on Tuesday? What Nigerians expect is that the government will be able to make a difference. 3 former heads of state attended the Council of State meeting yesterday. But a good idea. This is the 4th one, I guess, that the president will be calling, and the 1st this year.
Okay, so I had a lot to say about the pardons. But if my memory serves me right, I think you said Gowon pardoned Anthony Nahoro.
Yes, I thought
somebody to now repardon them when they pardoned Anthony Nahoro, Bafemi Awolowo, and Ambrose Ali. And they had to even check the Gazette that these people had been pardoned before in the past. And they were repardoned. So, there's so much to say, but there's no time. I'll have to go to the next.
It wasn't the Buhari administration that repardoned Gowon and Awolowo. They were not the ones. It's not this administration that repardoned Awolowo and Nahoro. Is it this administration?
And Ambrose Ali?
Is this administration?
But there's a lot to say. More southern governors are joining the presidential race of 2023 elections in Nigeria. Ahead of this declaration to contest for presidency, Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Udom Emmanuel, has started his nationwide consultation with critical stakeholders in People's Democratic Party, PDP. In a closed-door session with PDP senators in Abuja, Udom Emmanuel noted and lamented, I should say, that the country is in dire need of urgent rescue.
There are many reasons why people just look for an office. But trust me, if you open my heart, see it through, I'm here just to offer myself to serve. Some of us feel so challenged that Nigeria can go through what we are going through. It's as if there's no people to just stand up and offer themselves to serve. The problem we have in Nigeria is that we don't have leaders who can create money. And when you don't know how to create money, you can't manage an economy. I think we've reached that point where some of us needed to stand up and say, it is enough. So that we don't wake up one morning, our money has turned to paper. We have a country where even when there's fuel scarcity, we are still paying fuel subsidy at 110 million liters every day. So tell me the facilities we have in Nigeria to deliver 110 million liters of petrol only, and then excluding diesel, kerosene, LPFO, Jet A1, name all those ones. If you get to the West, they look at you, what you can do for the economy is what qualifies you to be a president. I think we are being provoked by the situation of things to offer to serve Nigeria. And I just want to believe by the new order this country will rise above all biases and call on Udom Emmanuel to serve. And it will be a privilege to serve our people. On that note, I offer myself to be a policymaker and also to control the resources of Nigeria come May 29, 2023.
Interesting times for Nigeria. A lot of people getting into the race and making declarations.
I think
Udom
it's
Emmanuel.
great. I think we're getting a crowded field, which is exactly what we deserve, such that every single voting Nigerian ought to be able to find their one candidate that suits them. Hopefully, when the primaries are conducted and we know what we're doing, I think it just enriches the whole process when people who actually have experience. I mean, Udom Emmanuel is a governor. He didn't just come out of left field from nowhere. So he actually does have the right. He has the experience to contest. And he has the right to throw his hat in the race, as a lot of other people do. But, there needs to be some kind of competence. There's some declarations you hear and you're like, tempted to laugh the person out of town, but this isn't one of them. Good.
I mean, good one. Dr. Bata?
Well, I mean, we're all Nigerians, and people have the right to say things are not going well, and I'm also interested. Once you meet the provisions of the Constitution, Section 131 thereof, which, explains the grounds for eligibility for office of president in Nigeria, then, of course, anybody can come forward. But this whole race is beginning to look like the bar has now become so low that I won't be surprised if tomorrow, some people that you don't even expect also declare for their interest in the presidential race. The thing has become an all-commerce affair. Very soon one youth corper will just come forward if he's of the eligible age of 35 and say he too wants to be, okay, maybe if you are 35, maybe you are no longer a youth corper. But, you never know. All kinds of persons will come and say they want to run Nigeria. But I guess we will get good clarity when the primaries hold, as they would in about a month's time. And after the parties have conducted their primaries, the field will be more defined. As one guest on this program said, the pretenders will be separated from the big boys. And then Nigerians will have a better opportunity to engage these candidates. And I hope that the campaign, when we get to that bridge and we cross it, will be driven by ideas, not by sentiments, not necessarily by ethnicity, which is always a very strong factor, but, as you said, competence, ability. So once we do this sifting process and we have a short list across the 18 registered political parties, then that's when the game will begin. But at this moment, a lot of people are aspirational. And, some of the people saying they are interested, well, let's see. Let them go to their political parties if they will get the ticket. But this is the first time all kinds of persons will say they want to be president.
Dr. Bati, I think so. Let me see if I can comment on both topics now. In all fairness, I think that this is the way it's always been. Everybody gets a chance, Everybody says they will run. In fact, some people, they are seasonal, perennial runners. They'll always be, and they will even get, ballot placement for any political party. And they will always come out. They will always be voted for year in, year out. I mean, we've had cases of pastors and the likes. I think it was Pastor Chris Okoti. That for a couple of years, he would always come out. He would get on, a political ballot and the likes. But for me, what is certain is, it is about who can deliver the promise of Nigeria. And the question is, what is even the promise of Nigeria as we speak now? With all of this happening, with all of these killings, with all of this wanton destruction of life and property, what is the promise of Nigeria? It is a promise that says we have the potential to do well and the possibility to do well. So for me, it's about who can deliver it. If it's a 35-year-old, why not and if not? See what the 35-year-old is doing in Chile. Changing the economy. In fact, a lot of people are saying, since, the back good old days of Chile, there's nobody that has energized Chilean politics like that 35-year-old. It could be a 60-year-old or thereabout. It is just who can make the promise of Nigeria work well and stop all these problems we have, litany of problems. Because we don't need those problems. Those problems becloud the possibilities, we have the potential. And indeed, they are so great. That's just it for me. I hear we need to go. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll talk to Rhodes Today, Michael Wilson, Adesu Omoro, Aaron Akeja to give us updates on Africa, global business, and COVID-19 sporting activities. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. We're going to London now for a global business update. Michael Wilson is joining us. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. As you probably know, it is a Christian holiday today. So basically a lot of the markets are shut: Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore and New Zealand. But China is still going, and they're a bit of a shock from China, actually. Everyone expected an interest rate cut there, and they didn't actually get one. Mainland stocks have been under a lot of pressure, particularly because of this Shanghai lockdown. The kind of horror stories that are coming out now, I was listening to an interview this morning, and this lockdown is very, very severe indeed. People are not being allowed out even just to have some kind of exercise. And also they're having to keep their windows closed because the disinfectant sprays apparently are everywhere. And there's a warning as well from major investors this morning saying that this lockdown could actually affect inflation, global inflation around the world because of the goods that are being held up. And it's become, obviously, China becoming a big world supplier, and that's not happening at the moment. And that's tending to push prices up. I just throw that into the mix. Ukraine President Zelensky talks about blood money being paid for Russian oil, in particular accusing Germany and Hungary of paying blood money for their oil. Russia it stands to make up to 250 billion pounds. That's $326 billion this year as a result of those kind of exports that Germany and Hungary are buying. There's a lot of frustration about that. As far as the United States is concerned, as I said, markets closed there for the day as it happened because it's Good Friday. However, it's worth noting that this rather truncated 4-day week, S&P down about 2.1, Nasdaq's off about 2, Dow's down about 0.75%. All trading obviously closed today. But basically, I mean, what we've seen an inflation-filled week, really, haven't we? This is investors coming to terms with actually what's going on, not just consumer spending holding back, as we imagine, even though retail prices actually grew. Elon Musk, here he goes again. Elon Musk talking once again. Yesterday, it was all about buying Twitter. Today, not quite sure about that. Not quite sure he's got the money. He'd have to sell because his assets are not that liquid and so on. I think it says actually a lot about social media. What he says is he's an absolutionist as far as free speech is concerned, and Twitter is not that. Twitter was that. Twitter is no longer that because they're worried about trolls, they're worried about false news, they're worried about propaganda, and Elon Musk seems not to worry about those kind of things. I would suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that the cost of free speech is actually quite expensive, and that's what's being seen at the moment. But you know, he may well come back. He's not somebody we were saying yesterday who to and fro's about offers. He says that's the offer, and if you don't want it, then go elsewhere. And the Twitter board is actually having a look at the offer as we speak. ECB had its meeting yesterday. Have to say I was not alone. Rotus and I were discussing this in the Global Business Report yesterday afternoon. Because the markets are closed today, I felt it worth returning to it. It shows that they're actually quite sanguine about inflation, getting to record highs and so on. Particularly, I mean, I found it extraordinary, to be honest, that they're this sanguine. They're not following central banks at all. Record high of 7.5% in the Eurozone. And all they're doing is just saying that in the third quarter, they will slow down and stop their asset buying, but no interest at all as far as interest rates are concerned. Now we come to the runoff in the French election. That will be very important. That's not until April the 24th, but Marine Le Pen has been exploiting cost of living fears, particularly in rural areas like Burgundy, where she's been meeting farmers who are worried about the increasing cost of fuel and fertilizer. To the UK, and the government's frozen a record $13 billion worth of assets linked to Roman Abramovich, who used to own Chelsea Football Club, doesn't do it anymore. Also, British Airways is attempting to poach cabin staff from other airlines to try to get to grips with this terrible travel crisis that's facing the UK at the moment, even though, as I understand it, the queues of lorries going across the channel are slightly easing this morning. That's what the latest news is on that. Not much really happening there. How on earth one has rail engineering works, these kind of worries with airlines, these kind of staffing worries at airports. Only the British could manage to bring all these things together to form this kind of perfect storm over this holiday weekend. Oil prices falling very, very slightly, but I wouldn't pay too much attention to that. The major players are not at their desks this morning, and gold is flirting with that kind of $2,000 an ounce level, only because of more fears about inflation. That's the global view. And let me, on behalf of my family and everybody here, wish you lot a very happy Easter for when it actually happens.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. Straight back at you. Happy Easter to you and your lovely family. But at first, I'll start with Elon Musk this morning. I'm sure probably in Elon Musk's very, very funny mind, he probably thinks Mein Kampf, written by Hitler and Rudolf Hess, was free speech. I'm sure that's what he thinks with all the rubbish he says. I just had to get that out of my chest. Secondly, I want to talk about inflation numbers in the UK and in America. You talk about peak inflation. Yeah, that's the possibility around some economists. Yeah, we're hitting peak inflation soon. But the numbers are not like that in America. If you check the month-on-month numbers, inflation is actually on the rise. There's a 14% percentile on the month-on-month number. And that's why some people and some economists are saying that at this point in time, the Fed should have increased interest rates to about 3 to 4% thereabout. Because even that is inadequate to be able to stem the tide of inflation. So year on year is 8.5. But if you check the month-on-month numbers, it's unabating. Real estate cost of buying a home in America, all-time high. Petrol and gas prices, all-time high. And these numbers keep increasing month-on-month in America. So are we not too optimistic or bullish about this talk about peak inflation?
I have to say I'm neither one nor the other. Personally, I can only go to what the markets are saying, and what the markets are saying is there is increasing thought about this, because they do go for the year-on-year figures rather than the month-on-month figures, because the year-on-year figures have always been an indicator in which monetary policy is actually based, as you know. So therefore, their narrative is plausible. Whether it actually means a great deal, I don't know, because these things, I think, tend to exist in the stratosphere. I know that I'm paying more. You know that you're paying more. I'm sure that people in the United States know exactly the same kind of thing as well. And certainly everything just seems to get more and more expensive. I don't see much indication of prices coming down. Certainly not in food, and that's really because of competition between the supermarkets. That's when that tends to happen most of all. Certainly the price of fuel and filling up the car and all the rest of it is not coming down. But I mean, I can only go with what the markets are saying, and the markets are saying at the moment that there was a lot of chat towards the end of this rather shortened week about whether inflation was peaking or not. I mean, that there are experts out there who are doing this, but the year-on-year figures are something that monetary policy tends to base itself on. As far as Elon Musk is concerned, yes, I mean, here's a man who has been talking up his company on Twitter. I've said in the past that if I were the regulatory authorities in the United States, I'd have a lot to say about that. And here he is coming along with Twitter, and then questioned at a conference yesterday and saying, well, actually, do you know what? I'm not quite sure. What can you say about it? I'm with you on this free speech thing. The problem is everybody says, oh, yes, we must have free speech. But the problem is there's a generation of people, I think, growing up now because they've been protected in their education who don't have the mental facility to be able to say, that's rubbish. That may be free speech, but I'm not taking any notice of that. I think that this has been filtered through various organisations and people I'm a trust. Therefore, I will trust that. Hence, news organisations which we all work for go along those kind of routes rather than relying on false news, or at least trying not to. Yeah, I feel as though his pontifications are something which, because he's so rich, the rest of the world has to listen to. The substance of it, well, we'll see.
Okay, still on Elon Musk. He says he has a plan B because he's not even so sure that he will be able to acquire Twitter. Now, what's that plan B likely to be? And what damage can he do? The CEO, Agrawal, is saying that he doesn't think that Elon Musk will be in a position to hold Twitter hostage, but it looks like that's precisely what he's doing. And for a man who is worth more than $200 billion, it really looks like he can do a lot of damage, and it will not be, a good enemy to have. So what do you think are the options for Twitter? The point about free speech, of course. I agree with you absolutely that, nobody believes him. And secondly, as for Zelensky talking about blood oil money, well, this is not the first time that he's saying this. But Germany and Hungary, that he called out, he didn't add Austria. Austria is part of it. Italy and Spain, they are looking towards Algeria. They face very serious existential issues. Are they likely to listen to Zelensky's rhetoric about blood money, blood oil money, and even maybe blood gas money? Because it is very clear in this case that there are very little alternative to oil and gas from Russia.
Yeah, I think you're right. The alternatives are very limited indeed. Germany, I'm not so sure about Hungary actually, because that's a different. Orban is very, very different from Scholz. Scholz has already said, look, how do I go back to voters and say, this is why things are so expensive? Do they want cheap energy or cheaper energy, or do they want to pay for more expensive energy? That's what they're weighing up at the moment. I feel as though the voters themselves will becoming quite generous about things and saying, actually, we will pay more, because Zelensky is absolutely right. But that's a way ahead at the moment, and the politicians are not taking any notice of that. No idea what Elon Musk's plan B is. He's not said anything. He didn't say anything about it at the conference yesterday. I suspect he's the kind of person who, dare I say this, makes it up as he goes along. I mean, I don't know. Just because he's rich doesn't necessarily mean that people will fear him as an enemy. There's no need for Twitter to do that, because remember that the right side of history, as far as Twitter, Facebook is concerned, is this increasing regulation on what they can actually do as social media, and that's something which comes from that's public opinion. That's nothing to do with money, and I think that public opinion would be against Musk actually treating Twitter as buying it and then treating it as a sort of toy. I have no idea what plan B is. We assume there is one, but I have to say, I was talking to other broadcasters yesterday about his approach to Twitter, which nobody ever goes and says, this is it, and if you don't take this, I'm walking away. I mean, that isn't how negotiations are done. Apparently it is, as far as Mr. Musk is concerned. I think he'll find that Twitter will be a little hard to swallow.
Right, thank you, Mr. Wilson. As for Zelensky, for me, he's coming to equity with bloody hands, because Ukraine was selling weapons to a genocidal Myanmar regime that was massacring Rohingya Muslims. But thank you for that. Now to our dependable Rotis Adiri for an African business update.
Good morning, everybody, and happy Good Friday to you all. We begin with the...
No, Tondo was saying earlier that there's nothing called Happy Good Friday.
Oh, really? Okay.
Happy Easter to you.
Happy Easter, there we go. Sorry. Happy Easter. Thanks for the correction.
Why is it called Good Friday?
Because it's good.
Good, okay. Good Friday.
Okay.
Jesus Christ laid down his life for everybody.
That's a good day.
So
right.
it's good, but it's not
I'll find out what Emmanuel, if any, thinks of that. But
I'm sure he will let you know.
Don't be cheeky.
To budgets. The National Assembly has revised the 2022 budget. Remember, President Buhari set forward a revision to the appropriation bill back in February. So it's revised upwards to 17.3 trillion naira. Our deficit is now at 7.35 trillion naira, which is about, I mean, as of the last count, it was when the deficit was 6.2 trillion, it was 3.4% of GDP, which reaches the ceiling of 3%. But hey, so that's going to increase as well. They have, there's a number of changes. The subsidy increased by 442 billion. from 3.56 trillion to about 4 trillion naira that has been approved for fuel subsidies. As you know, President Buhari said, look, realities have changed, and so that's the reason why they had to request more money. So that's going to have to be, as far as borrowing is concerned, that's going to increase. What else has changed in this budget? There's also an increase in the target for the oil benchmark. That's been increased by $11 to $73 from 62. So what that now means is that the difference between the benchmark price and the market price of oil, I think as at last count, crude oil was at $111 per barrel. That difference now goes to the excess crude account. Remember, the excess crude account has been depleted to the point of, I think it's at $35 million over the past years, where the excess crude account is. So with, they've increased the benchmark, so the difference between the two goes to the excess crude account. They've also, oil outputs, that has been reduced to 1.6 million barrels per day from 1.8. But if you look at the numbers from OPEC, our target was 1.8 in March. We did about 1.2, 1.3. As you know, oil theft and trying to restart aging infrastructure following the cuts due to COVID have been difficult. I think the police bill, they added about 182, police bill, salaries, the budget for police salaries has been increased by about 182 billion. That's the gist of it as far as revisions to the budgets are concerned. So, I mean, it's the same story for us, just have to increase revenues and try to see how we can pad this up. But deficit now at 7.5 trillion, that's going to be tough. The Central Bank of Nigeria has disbursed, or at least requested for 3.5 billion naira to be disbursed to exporters. And this is part of the R2 200 plan, where it's the hope that we'll get 200 billion in dollars in non-oil exports over the next 3-5 years. MD of Fidelity Bank, Mrs. Onyeli Ikpe, she revealed this at the Bankers Committee meeting yesterday. I think it said about $60 million or so in proceeds, export proceeds have been, borne fruits since RT200 was announced. If you remember, this is supposed to be an incentive for exporters to increase non-oil exports. So you get 65 naira for every dollar if you sell your exports, your proceeds into the I&E window. That's the pool for importers and investors and exporters. If you utilize the proceeds for yourself, then you get 35 naira for every dollar. So far 3.5, off to 3.5 billion, off to a good start, and there you go. To electricity, federal government is saying that the grid collapse is because of sabotage. So really not much to say here. This is the same issue that we've seen elsewhere in other infrastructure. The issue now, of course, is, I guess, how the security forces reduce the amounts of sabotage that we're seeing, with people taking parts and selling them. We're seeing this in oil. We're seeing it in the railways. We're seeing it in electricity. It's a big issue because it affects output for the country. To Ghana, Ghana's inflation has climbed to 19.4%. It is, before we get to Ghana, aviation. This was something that happened yesterday. APB is an e-ticket platform. They apparently put out a notice saying that there's a number of airlines, sell tickets through their platform, right? And they said that they would have to start selling airfare in dollars. There's a notice that they put up. Let me pull up the notice that they sent out. In that notice, if we can get that up there, the notice said that, well, essentially it's because, there it is. So, dear travel partners, warm greetings from APG. This brings to your notice that with effect from April the 19th, 2022, we're only accepting issuing of tickets in US dollars and not Naira, mainly due to repatriation issues and forex situation in Nigeria. This will most likely be a temporary measure till the forex situation improves. Our sincere apologies for any inconveniences this may cause you and your business. Thanks for your understanding. Well, within 24 hours, they reversed that, because you can imagine the impact of trying to telling people who fly with the airlines on their platform to go and find dollars to buy tickets for international flights. I need to emphasize. So within 24 hours, they reversed it. They said recall and cancellation notice. Dear trading partners, this service to recall and cancel the notice we sent out yesterday. Kindly disregard the said notice. Sales will be continued in the Nigerian Naira. We're regretting any confusion the airline notice may have caused. All right, now to Ghana. 19.4% inflation. This is what? A 12, yeah, it is. Food inflation in Ghana is now 22%.
Wow.
It is, there's a chart. Where's the chart? Let's pull up the chart. I mean, you'll see, remember, Rufai used to talk about how it was single digits. So single digits ended in July of 2021. And then from there, double digits, the climb is massive. Fuel prices, fuel has been part of the base for this. Food as well. It's a pretty tough situation in Ghana now. I mean, they've raised their benchmark interest rate, but it's not catching up with inflation. And then finally, Kenya. This gentleman, the CEO of Rubis, I think his name is Christian Gordon or so. He's being deported because the Kenya Fuel Regulatory Authority is saying that energy companies or rather oil marketers who are found to be hoarding fuel will be deported. So will be punished. So he's one of the first scapegoats. Although they're saying that he's just being used as an example that the government is the one that's to blame for where things are right now with respect to with fuel such as this. Because the oil marketers are saying in Kenya that they have not been paid since October of 2021 and they are still being owed money for fuel subsidies. Taxes in Kenya make up a lot of why fuel is so expensive there. They started subsidizing, but they couldn't keep up. Uhuru Kenyatta approved a supplementary budget of about 34.4 billion shillings. But on average, on a monthly basis, fuel subsidies are costing Kenya anywhere from 10 to 15 billion shillings a month. So that in 3 months, your 34 billion is gone. You now have to go and get more money. So the money just isn't there. They've been delaying subsidy payments. But then it's an election year, so to pad the narrative, they're telling them that it's oil. The usual thing.
Wow.
The same thing,
I mean, it's all the usual lies. You know, politicians always tell people. And that's why when you look at in Kenya, William Ruto is really getting hard in the polls. I mean, he just had a 9-party coalition join him in his quest, and the person that Uhuru Kenyatta is supporting, obviously, Odinga, he can't match Ruto because Ruto is saying all the right things. The economy is in dire straits. Like
still a long way to go. August is when.
But just like what's happening in Ghana. Ghana used to be a poster child for single digits, inflation rate, and how everybody was doing everything right, and how they had a very good Harvard-trained finance minister Ken Ofori-Atta. But look at Ghana today.
That's tough.
So that means the people that had the protest, the Fix the Nation protest they had in Ghana they were right.
Yeah, things are getting.
That means Bloomberg was right. Because Bloomberg said Ghana was in dire straits. They denied it and all of that. But you can see now, the jump is astronomical to 19.5%. And the funny part is, apart from the e-levy now...
Which has passed.
Because he wants to raise government revenue so much, guess what he's doing? He's taxing everything.
Yeah.
The cost of electronics have doubled by over 50% in Ghana because there's a tax on electronics. He's taxing every commodity possible in Ghana just to raise government revenue. And you know what that is also doing?
Squeezing disposable income
and increasing inflationary pressures. So price of things have gone up. What's it called? CPI is at an all-time high in Ghana.
Yep.
It's an economic basket case. It is obvious that President Nana Akufo-Addo has ruined the Ghanaian economy.
Quickly, on the proposals and the approval by the National Assembly, with the variations that the President of Nigeria asked for. What are the implications? We're told that, oil production, crude oil production, barrels per day, should be reviewed from 1.8 million barrels per day to 1.6. Can we even meet that 1.6 projection? Now, part of the request, which has been approved, is that subsidy for fuel should be raised from 442 billion to 4 trillion naira. Now, deficit has also been raised, right? Now, all of this, particularly with regard to deficit, is going to be funded from borrowings. It means that Nigeria's debt profile is going to go up. And what is the direct implication? Greater hardship for the people. So that's that by way of summary. And I think it's good news, that we're not going to pay for tickets for international travel in dollars. Because the dollarization of the Nigerian economy has been part of the problem. The Naira itself is already in very dire straits. And I recall that one of the major challenges in this economy has always been to save the Naira. The international airlines, they're saying that they have issues with repatriation. across Africa, they have blocked funds that they cannot repatriate. They have foreign exchange crisis. It's not just those international islands. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria is also talking about forex crisis. Everybody is talking about forex crisis. Yesterday when you were not around, I was saying that even landlords in Lagos, and I was reminded, not in our own part of Lagos, in a particular part of Lagos, they sell in dollars. They charge rent in dollars.
Yep.
This same Ghana that you talked about, they recently took a decision that people should only spend their cedis within the economy and not dollarize the economy. To save the Naira, two economists have been on this matter for long. Mr. Henry Jimmy Boyo, who is now dead, he used to write for Vanguard, less clever, under the pseudonym less clever. And Mr. Adaigofua Ojomaikre, they used to combine to warn that this Naira is going to get to a bad situation one of these days. Their prediction has come true now. I hope that the airlines don't return to this, or that other players within the sector do not place the dollar, as many have done already, above the Naira. It should be a wake-up call for the CBN, to take a second look at monetary policy, to see how monetary policy can be aligned with fiscal policy. It's the misalignment that is causing all of this crisis that we face in this economy. As for Ruby's Energy CEO, Bejerson, well, I like what the Kenyans are doing. We have a similar situation here. It's just that the people who are guilty here cannot be expelled because they are Nigerians. Because it's exactly what that Ruby's Energy CEO is being accused of, that oil marketers in Nigeria and traders, bulk traders, are guilty of.
Can you deport a Nigerian from Nigeria?
No, that's the unfortunate thing.
There's no time, but you can check your WhatsApp with my thoughts. I sent it to you already.
Tundu gets your thoughts out. Thank you all so much.
I always have time for you. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, thank you, Rotus. Adesoa Morwa, it's time for you now. Great to have you, Adesoa.
Good morning, Rufai. Good to be here. Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Dr. Batty. Tundu seems to be sharing a lot of WhatsApp messages with Rotus these days.
Because I don't get time to say anything in Rotus's segment, so I've got to send it directly.
We need some debriefing.
I'll send to you too.
We need some debriefing. We need to be part of those messages. Okay.
I saw you went to the State House.
Updates.
Yes, how did they say bam 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 bam? Don't worry, I won't complete it.
You want to bam bam?
I won't complete it.
You want to chill with the big boys?
Well, I don't know about that.
Dr. Batty.
Your former house, Dr. Batty.
Thank you, guys. Well, COVID-19, unfortunately, around the world, the infections have now surpassed 500 million cases. Yesterday, that's according to the Johns Hopkins University tally. Well, this is as the contagious BA.2 variant of the Omicron surges in many parts in Europe and Asia. The BA.2 variant now makes up about 86% of all sequenced cases globally, and that's according to the World Health Organization. Well, let's look at the data coming in from Nigeria. The latest data shows that 12 infections and no coronavirus-related deaths were recorded in the country in the data released by the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, the NCDC. We should be getting the next data, hopefully sometime Monday or Tuesday. And in Africa, the WHO says COVID cases and deaths have fallen to their lowest levels since the start of the pandemic, levels not seen since April 2020, about 2 years ago. It also adds that there is no country in the region currently seeing a surge in cases, because you recall that sometimes we have regions recording low cases, but some particular countries will be recording a surge in cases. You can look at Asia, where you have China churning out those numbers, South Korea, and some other countries, but largely most countries are recording low cases. However, in the case of Africa, the WHO is saying no country at the moment is reporting a surge in cases on the continent. Well, the agency is, however, warning that with the winter approaching for the southern hemisphere, there is a high risk of another wave of new infections because, as we know, coronavirus thrives better in cold. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization is again warning that the COVID-19 is far from becoming an endemic disease and could still trigger large epidemics around the world. According to the agency's emergencies director, Mike Ryan, it says it's wrong to think that COVID-19 did settle down and became pandemic, and that will mean the end of the problem. It says that's totally wrong. The virus is still circulating at a high level. And of course, again, China is a clear example of what that is. Finally, Pfizer wants to expand its COVID-19 booster shots to healthy 5 to 11-year-old kids in a small study data that has not been peer-reviewed or published by independent experts. 140 children who already had 2 shots of COVID-19 were given a booster 6 months later, and the researchers say that they found the extra shots actually revved up their immune response. Pfizer and its partner BioNTech, in a release yesterday, said that a closer look at 30 of those 140 children showed that they had a 36-fold increase in virus-fighting antibodies. They say this is high enough to fight the super contagious Omicron variant. Already in the US, the health regulators have approved booster shots for 12 and older, and of course 50 and older in the country. Back to you guys.
Okay. Well, let's start with the World Health Organization. We're told that the death rate in Africa has reduced, and this is what seems to be the pattern in certain parts of the world. But that's certainly not the pattern in China, where they still have issues with lockdowns in Shanghai, in Guangzhou, and in the Jilin province in the northeast. It's also not the case in Taiwan, where the Taiwanese have insisted that the lockdown that they had introduced since March 2020, 2 years ago, will still remain in place. And the indication is that the economy has not been too adversely affected, despite the fact that traffic in terms of tourism may have reduced. But with regard to go back to this subject of Africa specifically, what I find interesting is the report that there is a new variant, a BA4 and BA5 variant that has been observed in South Africa. 23 cases
Botswana.
of it in South Africa, and also in Botswana. And the WHO is saying that this is an indication that this virus can still mutate and produce new variants, and that nobody should ever assume that it has become endemic, that the pandemic, we're just in the middle course of the pandemic, and that countries should still be vigilant and take relevant precautions. As for Pfizer, well, they've made a proposal to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and that proposal will be considered. The research that you referred to has not yet been peer-reviewed. So Pfizer and BioNTech are, saying that they will share the results with other parts of the world. But of course, that in the U.S., persons under 5 are not yet, allowed to be vaccinated. But 15 and above, 60 and above, yes, have been allowed to take the booster shots. And under 11s, only persons who have suppressed, challenges. But we have to wait for the outcome of that from the US FDA before we know whether Pfizer and BioNTech will succeed or not. But clearly, in the US, it's only the Pfizer drug that is allowed to be used by young persons.
And we're nowhere near there yet. But I'm going to take those two stories and read them together this way. That story about how we're not at endemic level, which we had all hoped was around the corner, but alas, not quite yet. And then the boosters for ages 5 to 11, which are not being administered in Nigeria yet. So what are we looking at here with regards to ages 5 to 11 in this country? At what point are they going to get their protection, since they need that protection, since we're not at endemic level, since we're still in a pandemic, although luckily we've managed ours thus far. So at what point do our children, ages 5 to 11, get a look in at this point? Because they haven't had one jab, much less two, much less a booster, as is now going to be introduced elsewhere.
To be honest, Sunu, I don't think we're going to ever get there. At the moment, Nigeria is only authorizing these vaccines for 18 and above. And we're still struggling to even get those numbers, to get the jabs into the arms. But I think that the government and the health authorities in Nigeria are also looking at the data to look at those that are most affected by this virus in the country. It would be foolhardy to think that children are not affected by coronavirus. They are affected in a different way. And we've seen even long COVID in children in the UK, in other parts of the world, having extensive damage on even on their education because of loss of memory and loss of attention and all of that. So, but again, the data varies where you look around the world. And in Nigeria at the moment, we are still yet to get data on how coronavirus has affected children. 2 years after we've had this, 2 years into the pandemic, or over 2 years into the pandemic, we've not really seen any data on how it's affecting children, apart from closing schools, to curb the numbers, and then a few infections we heard about, those schools that needed to be shut down. So that's it to know. I don't think we'll get there.
All right. Thank you so much, Adesua, for your insight, and everybody this morning. I will take
Thank
a
you,
short
guys.
break
And happy
now.
Easter.
Yeah, happy Easter to you too.